Vanakkam Dohadeva, Vanakkam everyone. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I will share the screen. And we are looking at stages of unfoldment in Saiva Siddhanta. This is our third session on the subject. And we're approaching it on the basis of drawing on Gurudeva's material as our primary source, Merging with Shiva, Chapter 52, the final conclusions for all mankind, supplemented with other material. And in honor of Gurudeva's Mahasamadhi, we're highlighting some of Gurudeva's unique contributions to Charya, Kriya, Yoga, and Jnana practices. And those will have the word unique at the top of the slide. Well, we're continuing. This is our third session, so we're all the way up to the Yoga Pada. Previously we did Anava Marga, Charya Pada, and Kriya Pada. The Yoga Pada is the stage of uniting. It is also called the Sakha Marga, way of the friend, as the soul looks upon God as an intimate friend. The Patavi is Sarupya, likeness to God. Same form, Sarupya. In the stages of Charya and Kriya, the deep-seated impurities of the mind are cleansed as past karmas are resolved, and a foundation laid for the third stage on the divine path, that of yoga. So key word there is foundation. Can't have success in meditation without a proper foundation. It's like you can't build a tall building. Without proper foundation, it won't keep standing. Yoga is a very advanced science. It cannot be sustained except by the soul that is unfolded into the fullness of Charya and Kriya and maintains the qualities of service and devotion as meditation is pursued. So we don't give them up, we add to them. Service and devotion. The devotee who has served God well now embarks upon finding union with God in his sanctum within. He remains enveloped in the darshan of the personal Lord he carefully cultivated during Charya and Kriya, and on the power of that darshan, he is drawn within by the primal soul himself to rarefied states of consciousness and the stillness of meditation. As God is now like a friend to us, yoga is known as the Sakha Marga. So that was bringing in the primal soul, pulls us within. Reminds me of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which has the same idea. Through devotion to Ishvara, Samadhi is attained. I ran into a quote from Gurudeva a couple of days ago I wrote down, which has this same idea. Saiva Siddhanta is worshiping God on the outside and realizing God on the inside. So it's a dual practice, whereas many traditions are just one or the other. They're very devotional, which is Vaishnavism, without the monism, or they're very monistic, without the devotion, which is how many people practice Adi Shankara's Jnana Yoga path. This system of inner discovery begins with asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana. Over the years, under ideal conditions, the Kundalini fire of consciousness ascends to the higher chakras, burning the dross of ignorance and past karmas. Dhyana finally leads to ecstasy, first to Savakalpa Samadhi, the contemplative experience of Satchit Ananda, and ultimately to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Parashiva, To the meditating yogi, darshan is more than a communication radiating out to him from an external god or Mahadeva. It is a radiant light shining from the sanctum sanctorum of his own Sarasvara chakra. Worship for him becomes completely internal as he follows that light, that darshan, seeking to know its source. Though we can recall, Gurudeva is taking the concept of darshan deeper in each pada. So Charyapada, it was just seeing the physical murti, not feeling anything in particular, but we're looking at the murti and noticing how beautiful it is, how it inspires us. Kriya is feeling the energies emanating from the murti, the sanidhya, and attuning ourselves to the messages within that sanidhya. And then in yoga, we're not even looking out, we're looking up. We're looking into Shiva within the Sarasvara chakra, and experiencing darshan is the energies that we see there. In yoga, the devotee worships the transcendent aspect of God. He strengthens his body and nerve system. He disciplines the energies of mind and body. He learns to regulate his breath and to control the pranas that flow as life's force through his nerve system. In this process, the Kundalini Shakti is lifted and the multi-petaled chakras unfold in all their splendor. The subtle realms within the devotee are revealed layer by layer as he methodically perfects attention, concentration, meditation, and contemplation. Lord Shiva now brings the earnest devotee to meet his Satguru, who will guide him through the traditional disciplines of yoga on his inward journey. It is his spiritual preceptor, his guru, who takes care that he avoids the abysses and psychic pitfalls along the path. He strives with a diligence and energy he never knew he possessed, with a dedication he once thought impossible, and as he strives, his willpower is awakened. Finally, one day in his first samadhi, he penetrates to the essence of being in this ultimate experience, which remains forever beyond description. He has reached the union which is yoga. Turning from this infinite, returning from this state of ineffable fulfillment, the devotee brings back into his life a new understanding, a new perspective. He is never the same after that experience. He can never again look at life in the same way. Each time he enters into that God realization, that samadhi, he returns to consciousness more and more than knower. His knowing matures through the years, and his yoga sadhana is regulated. And as it matures, he enters ever so imperceptibly into the fourth and final stage of unfoldment, into jnana. So we can see here Gurudeva's idea that jnana is not a separate practice from yoga. It's just when you get deeply enough into your practice of yoga, you have moved into jnana through repeated experience of samadhi. So we have the four subdivisions of yoga. Charyan yoga consists of cleaning the meditation room or portion of a room and the collection of all the necessary substances for worshiping one's guru and deities relating to meditation. Kriya yoga consists of offering a prayer, a chant, or a short puja to one's guru and the guru's lineage after beseeching the grace of any deities your guru has asked you to worship prior to meditation. Yoga and yoga consists of the six limbs beginning with asana. I won't read them all. Yama and niyama aren't in this yoga and yoga. So we're starting with asana, the third limb, all the way up through the eighth. Jnana finally leads to ecstasy, first to Sapakalpa Samadhi, Satchidananda, ultimately to Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Parashiva. And our jnana in yoga is, of course, the same idea. Experiential knowledge gained by these practices, Anubhava Unarchi. The Charya component of yoga has two general guidelines for conduct in addition to the specific activities to be performed in the meditation room. Tirumadhuram gives the first general guideline in verse 1465. stating the charya in yoga that deprives him of desires. Tahattai vitta sariyayon ram ondru. Anyway, the key word there is tahat, taham, first one. Tahattai, taham, and then vittai. Taham is the desire, same as kama, and vittai is getting rid of it. Sabratnam Shivacharya elaborates on this line. Charya in yoga in which there is no place for self-centered and worldly ambitions will lead to kriya in yoga. Looking at the Tamil words, taham means desire, vittal means abandoning. The idea of abandoning desire is a description of the idea of dispassion, which can be defined as distaste or disgust for worldliness because of spiritual awakening. In the Yoga Sutras, this is called vairagya, which is translated as dispassion or freedom from passion. So we have a few verses on that from Yoga Sutras. The restraint of these activities, meaning the vrittis, mental activities, chitta vritti, the restraint of these activities is achieved through practice and dispassion. Comment. The question is asked, how do we make progress in restraining these 5 activities? A common answer given would be practice. This verse is pointing out that in addition to practice, the other important component is dispassion. In other words, the reason many of these mental activities are occurring is because of our attraction towards someone or something. And the attraction can even be a negative one. We're upset with somebody and we think about them a lot because we're upset with them. So we have a negative attachment, a negative attraction. And that's externalizing the mind. So we sit and we try and meditate and all we can do is think about the person. So that's because we haven't detached from the person. Dispassion can be recognized to have been mastered by those who have no desire for what is seen or heard. Progress in yoga is not possible if our mind is constantly externalized by objects or people to whom it is strongly attracted, whether actually seen or simply heard about. Some commentators consider what is heard to mean what is described in scriptures, such as the heavenly worlds. Second general guideline is the idea of maintaining equanimity, which is defined as mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. So as we find in Gurudeva's teachings, and I mention it now and then, I know the fairy tale concept of life, spiritual life is, there's never any big challenges, no difficult situations. That's the life we want. But of course, we significantly can strengthen our self-control when we face difficult situations. We have to pull ourselves together and exceed what we've done in the past. So difficult situations actually help us mature spiritually or mature the soul body. And therefore they're good for us. We don't want too many of them. We get overwhelmed, but we don't want to be totally free of them either. We need the right amount for whatever point in life we're at. So we want to face difficult situations and learn, in this case, to maintain equanimity. We're not upset by it. Sarvanyottara Agama Yogapada verse 4 states, keeping the mind balanced well when honored or abused, and in the same way when delighted or distressed, and having completely freed himself from being subject to excessive delight, fearfulness, and despondency, the sadhaka should repeatedly practice the disciplines of yoga. So equanimity is prerequisite to doing really well at yoga. That's what it's saying. So that's why it's charya, part of charya in yoga. Yoga Sutras, the non-thirsting for the gunas which arises when the Purusha realizes its own nature is the supreme state of dispassion. And that's called Para-Vairagya. Vairagya is what's being translated as dispassion. Supreme dispassion. Para-Vairagya. So what's that mean? When the spiritual awakening takes place of the Purusha experiencing its own nature, there is a natural loss of interest in all of Prakriti's manifestations. This is called Para-Vairagya, the supreme state of dispassion. Said in a simple way, when we learn to experience joy, not by looking into the world, but by looking into ourselves, looking into our soul, and we're being able to do that on a daily basis, which is yoga, then we're experiencing Para-Vairagya. We're not going around sad or anything. We're going around quite happy because the happiness is inside of us and doesn't depend upon what's going on in the world. As we know, if we latch on to possessions or people in the world, situations, they can always change. And then if that was making us happy, then when it changes, we become unhappy. So happy, unhappy, happy, unhappy. But if we look for happiness in the soul, it doesn't go away. It's there 24/7. And then we share that happiness with those we love, rather than counting on them to make us happy. That's how I describe Para-Vairagya for the family person. An important attainment in the Yoga Pada is experiencing inner light. Tirumandaram relates it to the Yoga Pada in verse 1444. Beholding the light of life is great yoga worship. Uyirukoli, Nokkal Mahayoga Pusai. So it's a light caused by life. Life, another word for life, is actinic energy or superconscious energy. And when that life comes down a bit from its highest form, it's perceived as a light. If you go higher, it's perceived as space. There's no light. So it's in a certain strata there in superconsciousness that the light or superconscious energy is perceived as the life. Superconscious energy is perceived as light. And we're beholding it, which is a dualism. I am looking at the inner light. So there's still a dualism involved. Beholding the light of life is great yoga worship. Okay, we get a unique contribution from Gurudeva on inner light. He's really great writing about the inner light. He gives the precision on how to experience it and how to deepen that experience, how to eventually pierce through it into inner space. Gurudeva says, after his first Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the renunciate's concentration and his practice of concentration should be easier. Then finally, when his inner light, which he will soon begin to find right at the top of the head, comes into prominence, he must turn his concentration onto that. And with enough mind power, he should be able to hold that inner light, a very bright white light looking just like a star right at the top of the head. Very precise description. This will give him figures and conscious mind forms about 3 inches in diameter, and then he will concentrate the light into a 3-inch diameter. He may not always know where the center is, especially if he has been involved in his Saiva Seva. If that is so, he should press the top of his head with his finger, and that will indicate to him where the center of that light should be. This will immediately center his awareness in the center of the light. Then he tries to part it, tries to open it up like a camera lens, and comes into brilliant, very brilliant light. It will just be scintillating, much brighter than a star. It will be like a carbon arc light. This is very brilliant and very powerful. The renunciate is then schooled in how to hold that to a 3-inch diameter, because the tendency will be for that light to fill up his whole head. He will feel very blissful. We don't want that to happen, because he won't be able to go any deeper. We don't want the emotions or the lower mind to get out of control simply because he found a bright light in his head. So when he sees this brilliant light right in his head, more brilliant than he has ever seen, intensified brilliance. He tries to find the center of it. When he finds the center of it, again trying to open up that light like a camera lens, he will then come into a state of consciousness called Satchit Ananda, state of pure consciousness, a state of pure bliss, Savakalpa Samadhi. Here he won't even be in a brilliant light anymore. Above him it will look like he is looking way up in the sky into outer space, and the color of it will be a whitish blue. That will be the Akasha he will be in. So Gurudeva goes even more, of course, in the Shum language into depth on different levels of inner light. I've never seen any other guru write about it with such precision. And basically in Shum, Gurudeva starts with the light that lights our thoughts, and then allows us to go deeper than that, and deeper to that, and deeper than that, and eventually end up in this brilliant light. And as we can see from the writing we just read, you can pierce through that and go even deeper. So light is not the deepest superconscious experience. Clear inner space is deeper. Oh, we have one more verse, Dhuramandram. Transcending all the senses, step by step, and progressing on the right direction, the sadhakas meticulously practice the disciplines of yoga and install themselves in a motionless state. Like the strongly fixed wooden post, by this they are enabled to experience a higher state of absorption in which one cannot feel pleasure or pain while being rubbed or brandished. For such yogis, there is the possibility of merging with Shiva. So certainly an important, unique contribution to practicing yoga is understanding awareness is separate from consciousness. This is a very big theme in Gurudeva's writings on awareness and consciousness and yoga. Consciousness and awareness are the same when awareness is totally identified with and attached to that which it is aware of. To separate the two is the artful practice of yoga. Naturally, the Shum-Chef language is needed to accomplish this. When awareness is detached from that which it is aware of, it flows freely in consciousness. You can try and say that fast, flows freely. It's very hard. The L and the R somehow are hard to get from the L to the R. That's why I say it slowly. It flows freely in consciousness. A tree has consciousness. Awareness can flow into the tree and become aware of the consciousness of the tree. Consciousness and mind are totally equated as a one thing when awareness and consciousness are a one thing to the individual. But when awareness is detached from that which it is aware of, it can flow freely through all 5 states of the mind and all areas of consciousness, such as plants and the earth itself, elements and various other aspects of matter. Here we find awareness separate from consciousness, and consciousness separate from the 5 states of mind attributed to the human being. Sanskrit, we have the word chaitanya for consciousness, and for awareness it is sakshin, meaning witness. And for mind, the word is chitta. Consciousness, mind, matter, and awareness experience a oneness in being for those who think that they are their physical body, who are convinced that when the body ends, they end and are no more. So that's an unusual writing. Gurudeva doesn't usually talk about trees having consciousness and experiencing them, but in this particular one, it shows that consciousness is not limited to the animal kingdom. Human beings in the animal kingdom, plant kingdom has a consciousness as well. It's just different than animal or human consciousness. So the last of Gurudeva's unique contributions to practicing yoga involves the concept of awareness aware only of itself, which in the Shum-Chef language, of course, is named Ka-if. And the Yogapada, the goal is to practice sustaining the experience of awareness aware only of itself for longer and longer periods. Try that one again. In the Yoga Pada, the goal is to practice sustaining the experience of awareness aware only of itself for longer and longer periods. So that's what it's all about, Gurudeva's practice of meditation. We go through all these steps to end up in Kaif, and then we need to sustain Kaif. So maybe initially we can hold it for 30 seconds, then we get up to a minute, 2 minutes, etc. So to extend the period that you hold awareness aware only of itself is the goal. Gurudeva explains that. To attain and sustain Kaif is a simple practice. You pull awareness out of the thought processes. You pull awareness out of the emotion processes. You pull awareness out of the bodily processes. And you're just completely on that pinnacle of being aware of being aware. That's so necessary to practice every day, even if you do it for a split second, because it detaches us from the mental processes. We can get stuck in a mental loop, thinking about the same things day after day after day in an unproductive way. If we can just experience Kaif for a split second, it helps prevent that from happening, and we can deal more creatively with the situations we're facing. So here's unique. Maintaining it is the challenge. The experience of Kaif can be attained by anyone on the face of the earth, at least for a split second, because it's so easy to be aware of being aware. To hold that experience and to stabilize the physical and emotional elements long enough to hold that intensity for even a minute takes more practice. Not too much, but consistent practice. To maintain Kaif for 2 minutes requires more effort, more will, more dedication to the life of sadhana. 5 minutes requires more. That's the test. So we want to experience it and then lengthen the experience. So reviewing the Yoga Pada, stage of uniting, Sakamarga, way of the friend. Soul looks upon God as an intimate friend. The Patavi is Sarupya, likeness to God. So when you experience the inner light, Uyakoli, Dhammo, to the point where you feel you are that light, then that's what I call Sarupya. Because Shiva's form is light, and your form is light. So you have the same form, same likeness. Sakamarga, friend. We started as Dasamarga, servant. So you can see we've come a long way. We started, God was so far away. It's like a servant and a master. Then we moved through father-son, closer, but there's a big difference in maturity between the father and the son. Now we're getting even closer still, and God's a friend. So we have a certain friendship, which you see in certain Tamil poetry. They're treating God in a very friendly way, not in a formal way. So how are we doing? Okay. Well, I had more material, but this has filled our time slot. One of the character qualities was there in case we needed more material, but we clearly don't. We'll stop here.